Throughout the world, invading forces that defeated Tartaria appropriated their palaces and red power stations and turned them into universities, museums, theaters, banks, prefectures, chambers of commerce, stock exchange, churches, high school, courts, bank, post offices, libraries, opera theaters, biomedical research centers, casinos, and tourist attractions, as well as cathedrals, synagogues, and churches, and rewrote their history chronicled in the collective, and continued to paint the structures that extract energy from the ether with the same colors as Tartaria, and keep destroying. Great Tartaria was then divided into civilizational categories like the Ottoman Empire, Byzantine Empire, and Ross Empire. And people have asked simple questions like, as you can see, everything was burnt to a fire. Architectural drawprints and blueprints never made available. Where did the stone, the brick, the copper, the iron, and everything come from? How were the massive structures and incredible engineering feats accomplished? A lot of people don't even know that the star forts, do you see this? Do you see this shell protecting it? See, you saw this in Black Panther, but you thought nothing of it. This is what a star fort does. You understand? The energy can now be used in another way. The architecture of Tartaria undergoes slight modifications and influences according to local characteristics of climate, culture, material resources. You will find that pyramids, theaters, and coliseums all had water channels running under them directly where the sound energy was directed. That's why if you notice, most of these structures are built on or near water. The star forts seem to have been designed to create a microdomes that protected the inhabitants and resonated harmony. This was detailed in Tesla's three-dimensional shell, created by interferon 2 Fourier expansion, three-dimensional scalar hemispherical patterns in space. So they pair couple into a dome-like shell of intense, ordinary electromagnetic energy. The atoms and shell are totally ionized and thus highly excited, giving off intense, glowing light, just like this force field right here. A lot of people want to know, how did they take the Tartarians out? What they did was they took out their star forts and their force fields. And what you'll notice about star forts is they aren't melted by plasma like anything else. You notice they're not touched. Why are they not touched? Because when they did the mud flood and everything, they took over the star forts, used the star forts like this for themselves, and destroyed everything else around it. The elite survived by utilizing the star forts during resets. Look at some old depictions of star forts that were surrounded by walls of mud and remained mostly undamaged. Imagine a society that created free energy with the classical arts and our jobs were musical in nature. On the esophageal scale, 528 hertz is significant. This sound frequency, we created plants, humans, and animals and made them grow larger and maintained a temperate climate. All cities located at strategic points on Earth along canals, rivers, seas, lakes, and oceans were star fortresses and had electromagnetic energy extracted from the ether. The ether was then captured through towers and obelisks and stored in the red and white striped power stations of the high civilization lately called Great Tartaria. The world of the Tartarians is literally the world under our world. The Tartarians or Tartars were the indigenous people quite possibly founded by Noah's son, making up the world-renowned Tartarian Empire. Amongst the Tartarians were tall people, averaging some 8 to 12 feet in height. We had an independence battle. We did not have an independence battle, because read right here. Let's go back to the question of when and how the U.S. was established. During the War of Independence of North America in 1775, an independent state, the USA, was formed. And this is when we realize that this surprisingly coincides with the end of the war with Pugachev in Russia. Pugachev was crushed in 1775. And once that happened, everything falls into place. The War of Independence in North America was the struggle with the weakening Russian horde. The Russian horde is the Tartarians. The Romanovs attacked the horde from the west, and from the east in America, where they had their colonies already, it was attacked by the Americans fighting for independence. Today we are told that the Americans fought for their independence from Britain. In fact, it was a battle for the parcel of the vast American land of Moscow Tartary, left without any central administration. Russia, Tartaria, was in a war, and the United States was a stronghold to that war. Once they lost that war in 1775, you already know what happened here in America. The USA was established in 1776 from the splinter of the Mongol Empire. Look right there. Tartary had no central administration. The American troops were eager to get to the west and northwest. George Washington became the first president of the USA in 1776. So, look, first ruler in the American lands of the Russian horde. Y'all don't even know this used to be a Moscow Russian country. The fact of the war with the Mongol horde were wiped clean from the pages of the textbooks on the American history, as was the fact of the existence of Moscow Tartary on the whole. The war between the USA and the remains of the horde continued up until the second half of the 19th century. Alaska, which remained Russian for a particularly long time, was bought from the Romanovs by the Americans only in 1867. Since Moors were the Tartarians according to Gothic architecture all over the world, but mainly in the Americas. This means that modern-day Europeans did not build any of these Greco-Roman Gothic structures in Old World America because a previous advanced American civilization called Moors and Berber Indians, all one and the same people, because they are both the Khmer, the Khan, the Kim, the Shim, the Kam, the Ham, the Sam, and the Ayam people from India. Superior to civilized world. And this is basically what they don't want you to know right here. They do not want you to know that America was Tartaria and it was a Tartarian stronghold. The Americas is Old Egypt, Tamari, the land of Moors, the land of Meri, because the ancient Egyptian god, Ptah, is from the Americas. Yes, Judah is from the Americas because his territory is Ptah, Utah, Judah. They don't want you to know any of this stuff. But in order to understand Tartary, you have to understand the history. You have to understand the history. You just have to imagine you are Tartarian, Russia, and you are occupying 80 to 85% of the U.S. You have the 13 colonies on the right who are encroaching on the land. And then you lose a war in Russia with Pugachev. You lose a war. This happens in 1775. What happens is there's disarray. You lost the war. It's over. Everybody knows it. And now they come from the west of the United States. And then they come from the east. And they crush the rest of your army. And then they just go, okay, we're going to take all these structures. We're going to make these ours. We're going to turn these into museums. And then they start with little sects of people who are now going to start to rewrite history for you. I call my buddy